All right, guys, welcome back to That So Far podcast. My name is Eric Lopez. I'm very excited for this episode. We are now 15 episodes strong. Last episode, we did a kind of debrief of a conference we went to in Texas. It was a conference for Upper Room, and we took a lot of notes, but we debriefed those notes within the podcast. It talks a lot about dying to self, becoming more like Jesus within his death when we surrendered to our death, the death of the old man. And it was really life-changing for us. So I know there's something good for you guys in there. Go and listen. It was with my wife, Janet, and her two siblings. So it was very fun. Hope you guys can get something out of it. Let's see. If you're wondering why this podcast is called That's So Fire, is because of when I was looking for a name, I asked my friends, what should it be? And they said, when you talk about God, you say that's so fire, that's so cool, that's so dope, whatever it is. And what the goal of this podcast is to awaken those conversations where you just say, that's so fire, that's so cool. So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing today. Today, there's a very special guest. I have a very special guest, and I just want to honor him by saying he is a man who follows the Lord, who loves the Lord, who walks in step with the Spirit, and the fruit of God just comes out of him. You could tell he prays, he invites the Holy Spirit in, and he teaches me a lot just by being here, being my friend. He's a great friend. He's a great father. Just seeing him, his two amazing kids, he's a great father. So I just want to welcome you guys, Pastor Jason Gawel.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah,
That's really kind. Appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? How do you know Jesus? Just stuff like that.
I'll start with, how do I know Jesus? I feel like in many ways, I was born into the church. I grew up in a Christian home, so I've kind of known the Lord my whole life. And it's always been a big part of my journey. And I went into ministry after college, and ultimately it was kind of by chance. It wasn't something that I was even personally seeking after, but the Lord opened that door to begin to be involved in ministry. And as I kind of got involved with that, really felt the calling of God to continue to pursue that. And, really excited to be able to share. Like that was, 25 years ago. And I've been serving in full-time ministry for 20 years.
Wow. So you mentioned like you felt called. A lot of people my age, I'm 22, they're like trying to find their calling. What was that initial feeling that you felt, or confirmation of a calling that you had when you were becoming a worship pastor or going into ministry?
I always took the idea that the Lord is going to direct and guide your steps, right? We even see that in Scripture. Yeah. The thing that I think a lot of people, especially young people, kind of get stuck on is they're waiting for God to move them. Yeah. Instead of taking the step. Right. He's going to lead and guide my steps. So I was always just kind of in my mind, Lord, okay, this is what I feel like I have in my heart to do. I'm going to take a step out and begin to do it. And the Lord will always kind of like then guide us. Hey, I want you to, move this direction a little bit, or, veer this way a little. But it's that, okay, Lord, as you begin to honor the God with your life, you're making godly choices, you're pursuing him, you love him, he's not going to steer you wrong, right? So as I, was your age and just began to pursue the Lord and follow him, I just allowed him to continue to shape that. And so I didn't have any plans to go into ministry as far as a vocational calling. I thought it would be in something completely different. And the Lord just kind of began to open that door up. And so I said, okay, I see you, giving me opportunity for this. I'm going to take a step into that. And so I was attending a church, and the youth pastor ended up leaving. And I'd only been there for about 2 months. So I was still relatively new, but I got involved quickly and was helping out with some of the worship and helping out with some youth stuff. And so the youth pastor ended up leaving, and the senior pastor then kind of came to me. And it wasn't so much that it wasn't a pinch. I had obviously built some kind of relationship with this community. and ultimately came and asked me what I consider being the intern at the church. And I didn't know what that meant, but it was just kind of the open door of come and get involved, help out with the youth and things like that. And I thought, well, I don't know, Lord. I didn't go to school to do this. I didn't feel called or trained to do it, equipped to do it, but ultimately prayed and felt that the Lord was kind of opening this door. And so I said, okay.
Yeah.
I'll do my best, So ended up, starting with the youth and just begin to do that. But ultimately, it was just saying, okay, God, I'm willing, and I'll honor you in this opportunity. But I think a lot of times what holds people back is that they feel like they already have to have the knowing, like, let me know the outcome, God, first.
Right.
If I know the outcome, that's easy, right? That doesn't require faith. It's the unknowing part of following the Lord. It's the faithful, even through not being able to see the outcome. And I think the Lord, really, He honored that in my life, and I know He can in others, to where if I just take that step, I'm living for you, God. I'm trying to honor you. Is this a good decision? I'm going to take a step and step out in that. And God's going to lead you. He's not going to just leave you hanging.
Yeah.
Maybe a door will close and then something else will open up for you. And then you can kind of understand and know, oh yeah, maybe God's leading me this way.
Yeah.
So, don't be fearful to take that step of faith, especially initially, because that will really, help kickstart maybe a new calling in your life, a new direction.
Right. Yeah, that's good. No, I can see, like you mentioned my age, like around my age, there's this like paralysis analysis.
Sure.
Like we just analyze for the whole time. We don't take a step forward. When I learned this the most, of like what faith is, just like I had this like relationship anxiety when I was pursuing my wife now. I was like, God, I want to hear a yes from you.
Yeah.
I want to hear a specific yes. And I wasn't getting that.
Yeah.
And later I was in the shower. This was after we were, I think, engaged. He like gently, I felt like He was leading me to know, like when you were thinking it was obedience or disobedience, if you pursue, it was faith.
Yeah.
And faith is uncomfortable. It's not like perfect feeling, and that I struggle a lot with, and I've struggled a lot with that paralysis analysis, but I think, like that faith walk, that gives me a lot of confidence to just like take a step and see where it goes. Cause like, what's the verse that says like mercy, Psalm 23, what does it say? Do you know? Mercy shall follow me. What is that one?
Yeah. All the days of my life. And in a sense, I don't know if that's, I think, trying to think all of Psalms 23. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is more of a personal question. What does your day-to-day life with God, quiet time, secret place, time with God look like on a daily basis?
I think it's good to have a plan. I don't want to just wing it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times if I just wing it, I get lazy, and I just kind of sink back and not be as forward with my pursuit of the Lord. So I like to have a little structure to that. So I've actually been going through the past like 6 years now, going through a year-long study of the Bible, or just reading through the Bible in 1 year. And it kind of has fallen on this January 1st, this new year start for me. So I just finished I think my 5th time through the Bible here this past month. And so I started again, and I just invited a couple other guys to kind of join me. And it's just, on the YouVersion Bible app, you can find different Bible studies or devotional, kind of walking through the whole Bible. So I incorporate that. Now, that's not just solely the thing that I do. I do like the Bible app, and there's been different times in my life and along my journey to where different seasons of, using different things that help kind of shape my devotion and time with the Lord and that kind of thing. But I found just that it's pretty convenient and easy. For the most part, I shoot for the morning time. Not every morning it hits because, either I'm busy, I got to be up early, or doing something different that it gets out of routine. But, you shoot for a mark and you try to hit it.
Yeah.
And then, it's one of the privileges, which I love being able to serve in the local church, one of those, great opportunities, and I know that's not for everybody, but is that I have the flexibility to kind of take time during the day. If I just need to go and like find a moment to pray or find a moment to kind of read, or I'm studying on something or something I want to present, or if I'm teaching, or, I can make time during my work day to do that. I know that doesn't happen for everybody, but you can still find time. I know there was a time when I was working not in the church, but whether it was on my lunch break and I'd pull up my Bible app and I'd be able to go through a study or something, and just to kind of force myself to make time for that. I will share this. Don't get too caught up in whether it's first thing in the morning or at night before you go to bed. I think that changes with what season of life that you're in. Sometimes you're too busy in the morning. It's easier at night. Like, that's totally great. I know from a time when I was real young, I kind of made a commitment to the Lord, and I hope this really helps somebody, that I made a commitment to the Lord I said, God, before I go to sleep, no matter what time it is, I'm going to make sure I've done my reading for the day, whether it's just one chapter or something in your word.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, it didn't matter if it was 10 o'clock or 1 a.m., I made that commitment. So when I was dead, dog tired, falling on bed, the Lord would remind me. And it was like, did I read today? Oh, and at that moment I had a choice, right? And I would force myself to get up, turn the light back on, and read for whatever it was, 5-10 minutes or to get that chapter. And it didn't matter if I had less sleep, I woke more refreshed than if I rolled over and was like, oh, I'll just do it tomorrow and forget it and push it off. I'd wake up groggy and not being able to get through the day. And it was just kind of one of those things that helped establish a good habit. Number one, hearing from the Lord. Like, I made that promise to God. So when my head hit the pillow, all of a sudden that thought, did you read? And if I hadn't read, I made that choice. Like, I'm going to get up, turn the light on, here we go. And so pick a time of that day that works best for your schedule, and then honor God by sticking with it and being, truthful to that. So there's going to be a lot of moments in your walk with the Lord where it feels a little mundane.
Yeah.
And I want to say that's okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like,
if
you know, if you can add to that or something.
Yeah. So what I was going to mention, just what you've been saying, is kind of like setting an appointment, like making sure the commitments, the habits you're setting up. There's this book by John Mark Comer where he says, like, spiritual disciplines or spiritual warfare. Yeah. Like, that's how you fight, basically, right? And John Ortberg, someone who John Mark Comer kind of looks up to, he's a little older in the faith. He says, like, people who are they got out of legalism, they're kind of a little scared to get back into routine. They see it as religion. Right. But what he says, it is like, you give more God opportunity to work in your life. Yeah. And that's, you lay a foundation for him to work. Yeah. Whereas if it's kind of like random, you're going to get lazy, you're not going to do it. But when you give him more space to work, when you're in the Bible, in the word, it's kind of easier to make time, it's not legalistic. This is how I fight. Like, this is the word of God. So yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Go ahead.
We're all going to like pick up habits. And why not create a good habit, even if in a season it feels a little bit dry or a little mundane? I'd rather make sure I'm still reading my Bible and praying every day, even though if in a season I don't get a lot out of it. Right. I'm still building something in me. Right. God's word isn't going to just simply, fade away. It's doing something even without me knowing. I'm like you had mentioned, that battling. There's a spiritual battle happening, maybe even behind the scenes of what I'm even engaging in, and knowing that. So for me, like, going through really, really dark, hard seasons of life, I fell back into what I knew I could do. Yeah. And they were read the Bible, pray, and go to church. And those three things are what helped me continue to come out of that dark season. Right. I could have gone a completely different way. I could have just, said, forget it, God, and walked away. But I knew that even though I wasn't getting a lot out of it, it was still going to be beneficial to me and into, my spiritual journey, right, if I stayed committed to those three things. And so not every season is always going to be like an upper room experience, right?
Yeah.
You're going to go through different moments. I mean, Jesus had to go through the desert. He had to walk through and be pulled away, and God was teaching him things. And it's the same for us in a lot of ways. We, even in harder seasons, have to walk through a lot of things on our own, or through loneliness or depression or difficult moments. And if you don't have those habits already in place, there's so many other things that the world wants you to begin to be drawn to, or the enemy wants to pull you away from God in. So yeah, those three areas were really big for me. So, today, am I 100% perfect all the time with my devotional reading? No, like I still kind of like all of a sudden on a really lazy day or whatever, I'll be completely out of my routine and I'll be on vacation or something and I'll be like, oh, did I even read today? And I was like, I can go, catch up. And so I don't hold the legalism form of in that sense, but it's because I desire it and want to, still have that connection with the Lord and spend time in prayer. And then of course, being on staff here, we pray together. We take moments where we're, really worshiping together and praying. And so that's also another part of that does affect my, spiritual life. And I know that not everybody has that opportunity, but like, man, get with a few people, like a couple times a week or something, and like spend some time praying together or worshiping together. Like we make time for the things that really matter to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
We really do. And so make those things, important.
Yeah. When I first met Jesus, there was like, I just got plugged in everywhere, but it was the darkest season of my life.
Yeah.
And I was like anxious, like most days, but there was just so much, wisdom, testimony, the word of God being preached to me, like almost on a daily basis. I had Bible study on Monday. I had discipleship on Tuesday. I had men's group on Wednesday. I had young adults on Thursday. Friday and Saturday were like my days that I was just reading by myself, and then Sunday I had church. So like the example that you gave, like in those dark seasons, like when you don't feel anything, those are the times like you're like building for the, I don't know, like coming out of it, like you're saying, right? So yeah. Another question I have is, how do you enter? Have you learned like more ways, or what is your way of entering into the presence of God? And as a worship leader, like how do you help others enter into the presence of God?
I think my answer probably has a couple different, areas or things that I can speak into, because I think they all kind of come together then. One thing in my life personally, there was a season of life that I pretended. I knew God, from the time I was old, but that didn't mean I always served God fully. Right. There was a season when I really walked away from God and kind of did my own thing. And I pretended like I still was close with God, and I wasn't. And I remember coming out of that and really repenting before the Lord. And I promised God I would never pretend in his presence again. I wouldn't stand in front of people and just pretend. And so when you see Jason up on a platform, or I'm, leading in a way, you're getting genuine me. I'm not trying to fake or pretend anything, because that's where you're going to see me be very vulnerable or real or cry or whatever, because I lived through what it was to fake it. And it deadened me inside in a lot of ways, because that's what you have to do. You've got to wall up everything else. You got to wall God out so that you can just pretend to be, something you're not. And so I promised God a long time ago that I would not do that, especially starting in ministry. I said, God, I will never just pretend. And then secondly, you can't take people where you've never been.
What do you mean?
You can't take people into the closeness of God's presence if you yourself have never tasted what that is, or feels like, or have experienced what that is. And as a leader, it's one thing to kind of stand up and say, okay, you do this and you do this, and then that's how you experience God. But with worship, it doesn't work that way. People follow where you will take them. So if I'm not willing to go to that secret place myself, I can't expect someone else to go there.
Right.
So I have learned how to find, even with myself, to step into that secret place of worship, or that intimate place with God. And it can be in a room of 500 or a room of 3. Like that doesn't matter to me, and it doesn't make a difference in really what I'm doing in that moment to experience God. It's just simply, and this would be the third thing, is that I have to really humble myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we approach God's throne of grace with confidence, but there's a form, a posture of humility that when I step into worship, and I'm so humbled by His presence,
Yeah.
that the God of the universe would pause for a moment to hear me, like that would lean in to hear me pray, or hear me talk, or hear me worship Him. Like that is so humbling.
Yeah.
And so for me to desire, God's presence to come and impact that space, and I desire that has to come from a place of humility.
Yeah.
And so like those things, I think for me, I don't know if that fully answered the question, but like, how do you step into His presence? Really being genuine before the Lord. Because one, it's not my work that's doing anything. God's presence is here. It's
Mm-hmm.
positioning myself to really understand that He's already here, to understand that He desires to meet with me. And so really it's saying, okay, God, here I am. I humble myself before You in this moment. Would You come and help me be aware of what You're doing in the moment? And that, for me, is a lot of the ways that kind of help shape how I'm starting that, process of kind of inviting people to join me. And really it's, hey, this is where I'm going. If you want to follow me, let's go. And a lot of times I've had people tell me like, that's what it is about you, Jason, or that you just go there and that makes us want to follow you. We want to step into that place where, a lot of people, maybe, it's different for them, but they're watching somebody else telling me how to get there, and I'm like, for me, I've always found it so much easier that if I'm just willing to step into that place myself, people will want to come.
I was going to ask, you have a very special ministry in which you invite people of different generations. I've seen kids up there on the stage, worshiping. They're in middle school. I've seen older folk up there. What is like you mentioned some, how would you mentor or help someone, become a worship leader, or, help others? You mentioned some. Is there anything else? Like, how would you mentor someone?
I found, number one, I think everybody has something to offer. And we can learn from the youngest to the wisdom of those that are older than us. Like everybody has something that they can bring that is special or powerful. And I've learned so much in my experience from both, young and old. And so, and I feel like in a church corporate setting, like that's what's, I think the difference.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to put on a youth camp, I'm going to want youth involved because, a peer-to-peer impact is going to be that much greater than just seeing a bunch of old guys up there.
Right.
Speaking of myself. So for me in the local church, I think it's so healthy to be able to see kind of a wide spread of generational, worship leading, because that's who we're ministering before. That's who we're inviting to join us. And I want even the young people in the room to feel welcomed and drawn in. So I'm going to have that middle school kid who has a heart for Jesus, up there worshiping and singing with me. Like I want them to be a part of that. I love our dear older saints who have such rich love of God, who have, in their own experience and in their lifetime have had so many amazing moments with the Lord. I want to make sure that they're not just forgotten, right? But so vital to where we are in the church community today to be a part of our worship. So I'll have an older generation of worshipers up there with me as well, because, and I think all those things are so important. So primarily like in our local church setting, like that's, I feel is so important. I'm passionate about not only raising up a next generation of worshipers, but seeing how everybody has a part in that.
Right.
That we all have a part in what that looks like in shaping kind of a worship community. So I don't know if that's the answer fully, but
that kind of explains like the difference, the why behind the difference. That's really good. If someone is my age or a little bit older who wants to become a worship leader, a worship pastor one day, what are the, like, I have it written down. What are the 3 most important things to keep in mind if they're wanting to go into that?
Yeah, I feel like I've maybe touched a couple of them just from my experience, and that certainly is going to shape maybe my response personally.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of going back to talking about the Lord's presence. Number one, like, you may have an incredible gifting. And I've seen some really talented musicians, but their heart was not in the right place as, in all honesty, as the worship leader in a sense, because they relied only on their talent. And for me, I feel like worship leading, it's kind of in God's kingdom, the upside down, right? Jesus came and he flipped principles and he flipped understandings of what that meant when he said, the greatest of you are those that serve, right? And to have that servant's heart. And so it's not the greatest musician or the greatest talent. It's who has the heart that is first and foremost there to serve. A lot of people don't quite know, like, even what it's like to be on staff at a church, as a worship leader. And maybe I'm presuming that's kind of the idea of, if for a young person saying, how do I be a worship leader? Maybe you don't want to be on staff at a church and you're just going to do gigs and worship lead other places. I don't know. But in my perspective, that's kind of what I'm seeing, because like, there's so much more than just what you see in those 30 minutes to an hour on a Sunday morning, that as a pastor, as a worship leader, that I'm helping to influence and shape in the community of the church at large. So there's a big part of that. And most of that is having a heart for people and serving them and loving them. And so, like, I think that's a big thing, is to really say, okay, God, give me a heart to serve. Give me a heart that is willing to go and pick up trash in the sanctuary off the platform, because this is what I do. I'm a servant, right? So it's not seeing yourself as such a great artist or musician that you're above being able to serve. And so that's like kind of the ground point starting position. I think I'll touch again about the whole, you're not going to be able to take people to a place that you've never been yourself. And I'm talking in the secret place with the Lord.
And are you talking secret place when you're up there, or are you going in the secret place like behind the curtains?
I'm talking about your life. I'm talking about who you are as a follower of Jesus. Regardless if you're on platform or you're off platform. Like, if you aren't able to, in the quiet of your own home, worship God or, seek after him, you're not going to be able to stand on the platform and genuinely have that same desire. I think John Maxwell talks about the lid, where if you only allow yourself to get to this point spiritually in your life, you're never going to be able to call and lead people to be above that lid that you've maybe set on your own life. And so it's that kind of principle of, I've got to be willing to take that lid off and say, okay, God, I want to go deeper with you. How do I get to know you more and more? Because then you can't expect people to go where you've never been. So it's just that principle. And I feel like it's so important. As a young worshiper, like, you have to, and I don't mean this to sound less sincere than what it is, but you practice his presence. I don't know if you ever heard somebody say that, but
I've heard that, yeah.
But you have to practice his presence. And because as a leader, there's things that are going on like all around in the room that, you've got to be aware of. But, man, I want to going back to being genuine. I'm not going to ask people to do something that I'm not willing to do myself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's been times when if I'm at home or in my office and I'm like, I need to get on my knees. Okay, I'm going to get on my knees right now before God. Because how can I then say, hey, you should get on your knees to worship him if I'm not doing that myself, or being willing to do that. And so there, those things like that. I think ultimately for someone young, maybe starting out, I have a few people in mind. And when I say this, I would say to them, keep pursuing the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to develop your craft. Yes, that's an important part of it, whether that's singing or playing, your ability to lead. But don't put that above your pursuit of Jesus.
Right.
Man, just fall in love with God.
Mm-hmm.
Challenge yourself to do more than just what's comfortable. Because if I just stay comfortable, I'm never going to grow.
Right.
I need to be challenged to grow. And so I'm going to dig into the Word, and I'm going to understand who God is. I'm going to find great books to read and good people that can be around me to influence me. I'm going to challenge myself. I want to grow. And so you keep doing that, and then trust that the Lord is going to open the right doors. He's going to give you opportunity to serve. It may not always look flashy, like, here, come and stand on my platform with the lights and lead us in songs of worship. Maybe, just maybe, it's, you know what? We've got this kids group that needs a small group leader. And you know how open kids are to, hear the love of Jesus, like in that setting. Maybe that's where God wants to begin to forge in you a desire to serve and to love him. Maybe it has nothing to do with church. Maybe it's your, going into your community and finding ways that you can help serve and just love on people. Listen, you're not going to be in the worship arena if you don't love people.
Right.
It's the hardest part of my job, but it's one of the most rewarding parts of my job, is learning to love people and serve them. So there's a lot to unpack, I know, in that.
That's good.
But hopefully that, maybe is encouraging to the people who are looking for that.
Yeah, I hear being willing to be humbly molded more like Jesus. Yeah, that's really good. I know, Upper Room, someone wanted to become like a speaker or something, and they didn't let him speak until he did 4-hour prayer sets. And he realized man, when is it? He was looking at the clock, when is this going to end? But that kind of points them to what's needed, which is secret place, prayer, being molded. Yeah. The most important thing I think is your relationship with God. And it's kind of hard right now in the American culture with your calling, and, I sing good, so that means I'm a worship leader, so that's good. I think, pointing them to surrender to Jesus, being molded, go be the parking attendant, or if they ask you, being willing and humble. And that's really good. I love that. Anyways, I want to say thank you so much, Pastor Jason. You've been such a blessing on the podcast. I'm sure many are going to be blessed by everything you said. So yeah, any last comments or things you want to say? Man,
no, I'm just honored to be able to be part of this. Thank you for that. I'll say this: it's okay to not know what's next.
That's good.
I
need that.
It's okay to not know everything down the road. The Lord has that, and that's for the Lord to hold. And as you pursue more and more God, he begins to kind of open that book for you to see more what the next step, the next chapter looks like in your life. And so I love that it said about the whole paralysis analysis, and don't be fearful to step out.
That's really good.
Honor the Lord and just continue to pursue him. And then he's going to open up what the best thing for you. It might look a little different than what you had in mind, but you can trust that God is faithful to know what's best for us. And, but yeah. And listen, we need amazing, spirit-filled, hungry for Jesus's presence kind of worship leaders to rise up. And And some of you are kind of sitting back because you feel like your gifting isn't quite good enough. I'm going to be the first to say, I know I'm not the best singer there is. I know that. I'm not the best musician. I can't even read music. I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But I'll say this, for whatever reason, the Lord has continued to honor and bless my yes. When I said, okay, God, I don't know what I'm doing. They need a youth pastor and a worship leader. I've not done those things before, but okay. Yeah. And I stepped out, and God continued just to bless that. And yes, did I get better in my craft? Yeah. But God has continued to place me in a position of leadership as I continue to humble myself to say, okay, God, if you give me a voice to sing, I'm going to sing for you. If you give me the ability to play, I'm going to play music for you. Right. I'm going to give that back to him because it's not mine. It's all his anyway. Right. And so don't let maybe your lack of not feeling like, oh, I'm good enough or whatever, stop you. God can still use whatever it is that you bring to him as that offering.
Yeah, that's good.
So
thank you so much.
You're welcome,
I'm sure that's going to help me. It's going to help a lot of you guys. Thank you guys all for listening. Tune in on the next episode 16. So see you guys next time. Peace.
It's going to be good.
All right, brother. Thank you so much. Your prayer helped so much. I was so nervous.
Why were you nervous?
I don't know.